to you by Podcast City Network.
Due to the graphic nature of this program, listener discretion is advised.
You're listening to ELS Uncut.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of ELS Uncut. I'm Everett Lee. You can follow me on Twitter at the Everett _Lee, Facebook.com/the Everett Lee. Click that thumbs up. And you can listen to this podcast and many other podcasts on the Podcast City Network. Head over to podcastcity.net for the latest episodes of The Everett Lee Show, ELS Uncut, Films a Classic, Forking Around with Cody, The Grimlock Show, The Chris Carnage Show, Super Radio Brothers, and Imaginarium with Scott and Todd, all on the Podcast City Network. Follow Podcast City Network on Facebook at facebook.com/Podcast City Network. Send a tweet out to Podcast City Network at Podcast City Net. Well, for this week, ladies and gentlemen, I have another indie film director, film producer, Domonic Smith. I got in contact with Domonic Smith thanks to Stephanie Davis, who I had on last week's episode of ELS Uncut. Big shout out, big thank you to her for hooking me up with Domonic Smith. And things are rolling for ELS Uncut with interviews because this podcast, like I mentioned before, is an interview-only podcast. No filter. Anything goes. Anything. And a lot of guests I've got lined up here next week on ELS Uncut. I've recorded just yesterday a podcast with Ron Jones. Ron Jones has been coming here to Daytona for Bike Week for the last 27 years. He's played about over 26 bars, and you may have seen him if you come down here for Bike Week in Daytona Beach. You may have seen Ron Jones. I had him show up yesterday while I was throwing down some audio and recording and editing this podcast. I got to thank my dear mother for hooking me up with Ron Jones. He came over, brought his guitar over. Me and McShaft was here. We were trying to get things ready for draft day. And we were sitting there getting things ready. And I told McShaft, I said, Ron Jones is coming over. You want to stick around and check this out? He said, yeah, I'll sit in. So he did more than just sit in. He ended up getting in a conversation, which was excellent, man. It was. And we just had one heck of a good time. Ron Jones just picked on his guitar, did about 3 original songs. It's the first time for the podcast on ELS Uncut, original music by a folk guitarist, acoustic guitar player such as Ron Jones coming on the podcast. And it was just a great time. We enjoyed ourselves, talked about a lot of good things, and that podcast will be out next week. I want to release that next week. But this week, we have Domonic Smith. Domonic Smith is an indie film director-producer who has made a fan-made trailer of Nightmare, Return to Elm Street. And the trailer itself has gotten over about 2.8 million views on his YouTube channel. And you'll get to hear his response on that. We talked about how he got into film directing and what he's been doing with projects, upcoming projects, just the stuff he's done, a little bit more about the fan-made trailer that he made, what inspired him to be a film director, and his journey. Really good interview. I cannot wait for you to hear it. But I do want to mention that on March 17th at 7 p.m. over at the City Limits Tap Room in DeLand, Florida, we're bringing Draft Day back. It used to be Draft Tuesday. Draft Day's coming back, ladies and gentlemen. Podcast City Network will host the first Draft Day on its 1-year anniversary. It'll be live at City Limits Tap Room. The Podcast City Network guys, Everett Lee, representing the Everett Lee Show, ELS Uncut, Films a Classic. We have McShaft, his podcast, Forking Around with Cody. Also, Chris Carnage of the Chris Carnage Show, my co-host of the Everett Lee Show. He will be there. Derek from the Grimlock Show will be there too. Maybe we could squeeze something out of him, find out when the first episode of Grimlock Show will be released. Action starts at 7 p.m. That's on March 17th at DeLand City Limits Tap Room. Draft day for St. Paddy's Day. It'll be from 12 p.m. to 2 a.m. Special guest at 7 p.m. We'll have free corned beef and cabbage, $2 green Bud Light, and $3 Guinness. Entertainment at 9 p.m. provided by Gunshy. So if you're in the area there, please stop by and say hello to us and have a drink and kick back for some good entertainment. And Camden Cruz, that's right, I said Camden Cruz of Seven Kingdoms, who's been on my podcast and a lot of mini podcasts brought to you by the Podcast City Network. He will be there for his birthday bash too as well. So it's going to be a fun night on March 17th with Camden Cruz birthday bash at City Limits Tap Room in DeLand, Florida. And if you're in the area, head over to 2620 North Woodland Boulevard in DeLand, Florida for City Limits Tap Room. Please stop by. Please stop by. And one thing I do want to mention before we jump into this podcast is our sponsor for our merchandise, which we are affiliated, which we got a partnership with, which you'll see some sponsorship material coming from Sports Sanity, which is located in DeLand, Florida. So head over to sportsanity.com and check out the latest apparel. And be sure to check out the latest apparel from Podcast City Network. And right before we get into talking with Domonic Smith, I want to mention about that great programming from Podcast City Network.
Hey fans, here at Podcast City Network, we have a lot of great shows.
We have a wide variety of shows that cover the landscape in podcast, a podcast for anyone and everyone.
Such as The Chris Garnett Show,
The Everett Lee Show,
ELS Uncut,
Super Radio Brothers,
Imaginarium with Scott and Todd,
Forking Around with Cody,
The Grimlock Show,
and Films of Classic.
And you can catch these and a whole bunch more only on podcastcity.net or on all of our great social media outlets.
Head over to facebook.com/Podcast City Network. Hit that thumbs up. You can send a tweet to Podcast City Network on Twitter at Podcast City Net.
So make sure that you join us for all this only on Podcast City Network.
You're listening to ELS Uncut.
Ladies and gentlemen, today on the podcast is none other than Domonic Smith. He's a film director and producer. Domonic, how's it going, man?
It's going good, man. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. Not too bad. I have to throw this out here. I got to give Stephanie Davis a big thank you for getting me in contact with you. And when she did get me in contact with you and told me to look you up, and I was doing research on you, I cannot believe the work that you have accomplished in the last few years.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, I will also piggyback on that and give a huge shout out to Stephanie Davis as well, man. I was very excited that she passed my name along to you. And yeah, I appreciate you reaching out, man.
Yeah, no problem. I love talking to film directors, indie film directors, and everything that they do, man. I enjoy it. I love talking with them and talking about their passion for film and everything. And that, for you, started back in growing up in Michigan. How was it growing up in Michigan for you?
I mean, it was great. Coming up, actually, so I didn't start off doing film in Michigan. I was an artist. Just like I used to do a lot of like animations and sketches and stuff. And for some reason, I thought I was gonna be like a comic book artist or something when I came out. But I was always a storyteller and writing stories and stuff. Always doing like creative writing, and I wrote poetry a lot and things of that sort. And as I got older, I had the chance to play with this editing program, and I'd never even thought about it when I was in high school. Like I didn't think, as many movies as I've seen, I never thought like as filmmaking as like actually being a profession where like people have that job. So like later in my teens, I actually got involved in doing film. But during my time of doing it, there wasn't really a lot of people in Michigan who were doing films. So I was kind of a one-man band when I started out, making a bunch of really crappy short films.
At what age, at an early age, what films inspired you to get into and to love films?
Nightmare on Elm Street was definitely a big one for me. Nightmare on Elm Street, I would say Wizard of Oz, actually. Wizard of Oz was one of the films like I had seen 100 times, like when I was a kid. Like I would watch it every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that movie got, like, I think that movie just taught me that it was like awesome to have an imagination, and just to be able to create this world that was so different than reality.
Oh yeah, definitely. Wizard of Oz is such a great movie. I can always watch it, and I can never get tired of watching that movie. It's so great, and the story behind that. And Nightmare on Elm Street, Freddy Krueger scared me as a kid. Him and Jason Voorhees, they both did.
Yeah, that was my first horror film, was Nightmare on Elm Street. I snuck and watched it with my uncle, and it screwed me over for months, man. And then as I kind of grew and started watching more horror films, because basically my mom we used to have like movie Tuesdays where we'd go to this place called Family Video, and we'd rent a video, and she'd always like kind of let me rent what I wanted. And as a kid, for me, it was always, what's the most like interesting movie cover? And like B horror films always had the most interesting covers. Oh
yeah.
To like kind of to suck you in. So that's how like I got so like engulfed in like in horror, was just as a kid. My mom would swear that she didn't let me watch those movies, but she did.
I miss those days. Going to the movie store on a Friday night afternoon or after in the evening with your parents, and going to the video store, like the local video store or Blockbuster, and just renting that movie and having it for the weekend, and then or going over to your friend's house, taking the video over, or having them come over. Man, I miss times like that, man. There's
there's nothing like that no more, man.
No, there's nothing like that no more. And I feel bad for like generations now and kind of before missed out on that, because they've never got to experience anything like that before, Yeah. How was it going into video production and exploring the aspects of film at your local cable access center? I read this on your bio. This is where I got most of the questions from.
Yeah, it was so different compared to just how I run productions now. It was like on the lowest grade possible. It was awesome. Like PMN, Public Media Access. The Public Media Network is what it's called now. It's an awesome program. Anybody who has access to, like, if they want to get into filmmaking and have access to like the Public Media Access Center, I would definitely suggest going to it. I paid like $15 to like take these classes. It was like a 1-day class, and then like after the class, I'm able to like check out video equipment, lights. I can edit in their editing booths. Like, it was just the best use of my money possible. And that's how I got into it. And in the beginning, like I said, I didn't know a bunch of people who did films, so it was just up to me to link up with my friends who did film and teach them how to hold a boom, or something along those lines.
Right.
And it was just it's tough because none of them have the passion for it. So it's just like sound may be a little bit crappy, or camera just isn't the best. But I always worked with what I had, and I just remember when you start off being so proud of it, like no matter how bad it was, I remember being so proud of it, like showing my girlfriend, showing my mom, and I feel like people were cringing a little bit, but it's like, you know what? Like, he loves it. So we'll pretend like it's awesome.
That is cool. That is awesome. What college did you attend for film production?
So I ended up going to the Art Institute of Tampa.
Uh-huh.
And I actually did that like a little bit later. Like I had done like my own stuff for a few years, and it took me a while to finally convince myself, you know what, I'm just gonna go ahead and jump in all this debt and go to film school. So I think I went around 2010. I enrolled in the Art Institute of Tampa, and it was a great experience. If I were to redo it, I might not do it. Nothing to do with like the school or anything. I just think I kind of had the skills already that I needed. It was just a matter of me getting on set, like getting on other people's sets. But I still feel like I got out of it what I needed, which was I went to the Art Institute of Tampa, and for me, it was like a frat mentality or a sorority mentality where it's like, I need to get myself around like-minded individuals who I can become best friends with. And then now, once I graduate, I'll always have this friendship of people who I can, bring back, and, they'll help me with my projects and I'll help them with theirs. And that's pretty much what I got out of it. When I went into it, like I hit the ground running, and it was similar to the Public Access Center, where when you're in film school, you get to check out all this equipment. It's all, covered in your tuition. And some of the people one of the common things that I would always hear from other people who went to the school was the students only checked out equipment for classwork. And like my thing was like, no, man, like I want to be shooting all the time. So like I was always checking out equipment, always experimenting, just shooting as much as freaking possible.
Right.
I loved it.
Yeah, because you have access to everything just about at your fingertips, and you can learn how to do stuff and actually learn how stuff operates, and just learn and just get a hang of everything. That's great. That is awesome. That is.
Yeah, my thing was always, I was like, if you don't want to do this all the time, this is not your passion. Like this is a hobby for you. If this isn't something that like because I'm always thinking about film, like always. My wife hates it.
That's like sometimes my wife, with me doing podcasting and stuff and running a podcast network and lining up stuff and everything. It's like sometimes she's like it's just overbearing at times and stuff though, but it's cool that she lets me do it, it's like my thing. She understands that, and I let her do her thing.
No, I get that all day, man.
But what would we do without our wives, man?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, what would we do? We'd be in trouble.
Yeah, man, she definitely keeps me she evens me out. I'll definitely say that. She definitely evens me out, man. I'd be all gray. I'd probably have a lot more film projects done, but I'd probably be a bit manic, man.
Talking about projects, what projects have you done since graduating the Art Institute of Tampa? What was some of your earlier stuff when you first got out of college? Like you graduated, you're like, man, now I'm going to go out and hit the ground running and just go with it. What was some of the first things that you did?
So some of the first stuff, so my biggest thing was, when I was getting ready to graduate, said I wanted to do a feature film. I was like, I want this to be my graduation gift to myself. It's like just attempting to make a feature film. And let me tell you, feature films are so different than short films. Like at that time, I had done so many short films, and I'm just like, it's just a longer short film. This, like, how is this any harder? But there's so much that goes into it. You know, you want to get it sold, all of that stuff. It's just, you know, it's a lot of work. But I had a friend me and a friend, Tomas Galang, we co-directed this feature film called Waves. It was like a double feature, but not a double feature. It was like two stories that stemmed off of like the same event. It was a sci-fi horror that, as we shot it, slowly transitioned into like just a sci-fi thriller. And it was fun. We didn't really know what we were doing. Literally took us like 45 days to shoot this this feature film. No, like everybody came out for free. Everybody dedicated for it. Like it wasn't 45 days straight, but you know, just the whole film mentality when you're first getting into it is, you know, shooting on weekends. It's like the weekends are when everybody's available. So we just like sacrificed our weekends for a really long time. And so I did that film, and it was just like in post-production forever, for years. And it just got finished a few months ago. But awesome. After we did that, yeah, I'm excited. It's like we're in the process of talking to a few distribution companies right now just to find the best sell. And then aside from that, I had done a few 48-hour film festivals, which I was like super into at the time. And then wrapping that up, I did a film called Reset, which was just like my stamp on like, you know, my style and, you know, just the type of story that I wanted to tell. Because everything else up until that point had always been something that I needed to express with a disclaimer of, before you watch this, keep in mind, you know, I did this in 48 hours, or before you watch this, keep in mind that this or that. I wanted to do a film where it's like, you know what, there's no excuse. Just watch it and enjoy it for, you know, for it being me. And that was my big one. And then after that, I did a horror film called Van, which was based on a story from there's this app, I don't know if you've heard of it, it's called Hooked. And I
think so, yeah.
It usually pops up on like people's like app commercials, where it's like it's just it's a bunch of stories, but they're all stories told through text messages. So you just like watch the text messages like pop up. But with Hooked, it's usually all like horror stories. So I had found one on there that I was super into, and I reached out to the writer, and we kind of switched it up just to make it more feasible for an actual screenplay. And we did that film, and then after Van came, of course, Nightmare Return to Elm Street.
Yeah, that right there. What's this? This is crazy because I was looking for some stuff on horror on YouTube, and I came across the Return to Nightmare on Elm Street, and I watched it. I'm like, man, I was like, this is great. And then I talked to Stephanie Davis, and she hits me up with you, and she says, hey, he's doing this Return to Nightmare on Elm Street. I was like, really? So when I started doing the research on you, I pulled it up. I'm like, dude, I seen this before. I was like, this is the guy that did this? Oh my! I mean, I didn't know what to say, man. I was like, this is just so coincidental, man. I was like, I have to talk to him. I have to.
I appreciate that, man.
Because it got me, because I'm like, man, this right here, if feature film of like this right here, I would definitely go see. I definitely would go see, because I did enjoy and do enjoy the Freddy Krueger franchise. I do. And I did kind of watch the remake, but I just my heart's with the original, man. You know, Robert Englund.
Right.
I mean, the remake was good, but it's just I just had to stick to the original because I'm always liked Robert Englund. I associated him with the character of Freddy Krueger, and that's going to lead me to this question here. It's like, out of making that fan-made trailer and everything, why did you choose, out of all the horror icons, you decided to choose Freddy Krueger?
Well, because it was my first. Like, it was the first thing that had ever scared me. and just going back to it, it was always, for me, it was the best because it was a horror slasher that you couldn't really prevent.
Right.
For me, you know, like Chucky had the people that he came after. Friday the 13th, like you gotta typically, you know, you gotta go to the campsite. So just in those situations, it's like, all right, you know, at some point you can avoid these killers, but with Nightmare on Elm Street, like you just have to go to sleep. And I always thought like just that idea was just so horrific. And for me, it was like it was my Star Wars. Like Nightmare on Elm Street was it's the one franchise that like I just, you know, like I nerd out on, and like I know like absolutely everything about it.
It is. It's so good. Out of all the Elm Streets, out of the franchise, what would be your favorites?
So in order, it would probably be New Nightmare, which is when Wes Craven came back, and they basically let him like put the nail in the coffin and like finish the franchise. That was definitely one of my favorite ones, just because like I'm really into things that are meta, and they kind of like break the fourth wall, and it would like allow the characters to acknowledge, you know, this is a movie.
Right.
So like I love that one, and I thought it had the strongest story like for the entire franchise. And that's like, I'm just, for horror films, I'm huge on like story and things that make it feel different than just like your standard formula for like what makes a horror movie. Mm-hmm. And I felt like that definitely did it. And then after that would probably be Dream Warriors, just because yes. Dream Warriors was just one of the most creative Nightmare on Elm Streets. It still, like, I think that was like the brink where it's like, all right, we're gonna let Freddy Krueger talk a bit more. We're gonna allow him to be a little bit comedic, but not over the top, and we're still gonna keep everything scary.
Right.
That was the best. Like after, for me, after New Nightmare, that was like the best. Like hands down. And then it would go the original, so the very first one. So those are like my top three.
That I like the Final Nightmare because they reenacted the scene from the first movie with the Skin the Cat as Freddy said, hey, you want to play Skin the Cat? Watching that scene, how they reenacted that from the original, that was pretty freaky, man. It was, and then seeing them do it again, that was pretty cool. And it was a real good written story. And then Wes Craven basically he ended it. And of course the third one, man, I loved the third one because it's just it gave the victims a chance to fight back at Freddy, because from the first two they never really fought back, and in this one it's like you're in the dream world, you could do whatever, and they ended up fighting back. And then I would have to say that's my favorite one, and also too the soundtrack to it, man, because of the time and stuff.
Oh yeah. Yep, definitely.
Yeah, Dawkins.
Yep.
yeah. That, I mean, I enjoy 80s hard rock, 80s hair bands, and they were one of the ones that I enjoyed. And I had the album with that song on it and stuff. And the video is just freaking great, man. How they shot the video. And then, of course, in the third one, you had Patricia Arquette. You know. And she ended up, you know, that kind of helped her career. And I liked how they introduced. I'm probably saying this wrong. Amanda from the first one, or no, Nancy from the first one.
Yeah, Nancy.
There we go. Yeah, she comes back. Yeah. You know, I like that tie they had with it. And, definitely the first one, especially with the, what do you call it, the scene with Johnny Depp in the bed.
Oh, yeah. I've seen like all the BTS, like everything with Nightmare on Elm Street, and I love when they talk about how they shot that scene, and like it was just like on a rotating room, and they like the blood like the room flips upside down, so you get like the blood spraying out, and then like I guess hit the lamp that was like on the ceiling, and like all the blood was like electrified, and like somebody like got like a jolt, and it was interesting like listening to those stories.
It is just interesting seeing what went into a movie like that, such an iconic classic movie like that. What'd you think about Freddy vs. Jason, having those two characters? Because I remember when that movie came out and everyone was all hyped up for it. To me, I felt the ending was kind of a little bit let down. I was expecting more, but that's what I got, and what everyone got.
I have two different feelings. I mean, there's the today feeling, and then there's like when it came out when I was younger. When it came out, I remember when the trailer dropped, and like I lost my mind. And I remember walking home, not even caring about the movie that I went to go see that day because I was so amped about that trailer. And I just couldn't shut up about it. And when I went to go see it, I thought it was amazing. I thought it was like just some of the greatest stuff I had ever seen. Now that I'm an adult and I go back and watch it, I'm just like, ooh, this is rough. But I can still respect it for what it is. I think Freddy's makeup never looked better. Like, right. And you can watch that movie, and like it's the first film where like they are not afraid of like close-ups and like throwing a little light on them, because like it's like the makeup was impressive. Right. The ending, I was so about it as well. If you like watch the behind the scenes, they have like there's like 6 different endings of like how everything closes out. Mm-hmm. And that one wasn't my favorite, but at the same time I was like, you know what, Freddy gets a wink. So in my head, like he won. So that, like that kind of makes me happy. Yeah,
it was. I did like that because I went and seen it on opening day, and then at that part there at the end when he winked, everyone just laughed in the theater and then got up and left, and they're like, wow, that was great. And Freddy got the last, you could say he got the last laugh, Yeah. He definitely did. He definitely did. I was looking up on your YouTube channel here. You have quite a bit of content on here. I said to myself, there's no way I'm going to get through watching all this before I talk to them. I did watch some of them. I'd have to say it's pretty neat that you did commercials. I did watch the Doritos commercial because I thought the guy on the thumbnail for the Doritos was Macho Man Randy Savage. I'm like, when did he do a Doritos commercial? So I clicked on it and I watched. I'm like, man, that was pretty entertaining, man.
Yeah, that's actually that's a close buddy of mine. He actually does wrestle. He wrestled for WWE for a little while. I'm a wrestling fan. Nice. Yeah, his name's Bram.
Yes.
Yeah, he was married to what's her name? Her name's Charlotte.
They were married. Yeah, Charlotte Flair.
Yep, Charlotte Flair. Ric Flair's daughter.
Yep.
So him and I are super cool. He was in a film I did called Blind Tag a few years ago. And he just, man, he's one of the most, like, he's biggest teddy bear, one of the most awesome guys ever. And just fun to work with, and his British accent will like melt you.
That is awesome. That is what went in to filming this fan-made trailer, The Nightmare Return to Elm Street. How long did it take, and how was the process on that?
It was a pretty different process compared to everything else that I do. Just because when you're making any other film, it's kind of just like once you've done it so many times, you're used to it. Mm-hmm. With this, it was a little bit different because I came up with the story, and I'm like, okay, this is, somewhat of the overall idea of what I want to go with. And then I teamed up with my buddy Damien Alpazar, and we sat down and like wrote a treatment, or we came up with just like the beats, like, all right, this is what happens, these are our lead characters, like, you know, creating character breakdowns and all that stuff. And then met with a buddy of mine, Sean Gloria, and he helped piece together our treatment. So after the treatment's done, it's like, okay, now let's cherry pick scenes that we want to shoot that would sit well in a trailer, and like just help like tell the story within a trailer. So we ended up picking like maybe 18 scenes. Like, okay, we'll shoot these scenes. And basically what ended up happening was we shot 8 days, over the span of like 3 weeks. We shot 8 days. And some days what would happen is like in the middle of the night, I'm just like inspired, and I'm like, oh my God, like we should put this scene in there because this will help tell this aspect of the story that I didn't even think about before.
Right.
And so what originally was 18 scenes ended up turning into 28 scenes.
Wow.
Yeah, before we had finished everything up. And it's just to make a project that's only meant to be trailers, it is a challenge, man. Like, it is so hard because a lot of it, you have to keep in mind that this is only meant to be a trailer. When you're shooting certain scenes, it's like, okay, this scene is good, but I only need these moments because you're only going to, you know, this moment's only going to be on screen for like 3 seconds, even though the scene is like 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever it may be. But we would still film the entire scenes, but I would just have to get certain moments where it's like, yeah, he says this and then turns around at this point. So then we have to like, you know, we have to dolly in at this point because for the trailer, it's a good trailer shot, even though for the scene, it may not make much sense, but for the trailer, it's going to make so much sense.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it was really complicated. We even had moments where it wasn't a scene and I'm just like, hey, I need you, like, you know, I'm going to have you in the library and we're just going to dolly in. You're just going to turn like and look past camera. And it's like, for what? And it's just like, because it's a good moment. It's a good moment for the trailer.
Spontaneous, you know, it's a spontaneous moment. You add to it, which is cool. That's neat because it shows how passionate you are and you enjoy and love what you're doing. And I came across a picture talking about enjoying and loving what you're doing, is a picture of you and Kevin Smith. I asked Stephanie Davis this because she was a script supervisor for Kevin Smith.
Yep.
How did you meet Kevin Smith? Because in the picture, it's you and him just sitting there, just smiling. And what came of meeting the great Kevin Smith, man? Because I'm a fan of Kevin.
So I've been working on a feature film of his called, I'm pretty sure I can put it out there because he's already done interviews on it. It's called Kilroy Was Here, and it's an anthology horror film. I worked on it with him back in his last year, June maybe, I can't remember specifically, but then he also came back just recently in January and we were filming again. And we run the shoots, like the shoot is like just a week long. And then like once it wraps up, typically the last day, he'll give a big thank you or whatever, like after the final shot, and just like offer people to like take pictures or whatever it may be.
Right.
And just super cool dude, man. He's one of the few people, you know, like that saying about like you should never meet your heroes just because they probably won't live up to those expectations.
Exactly.
He is one of those guys that absolutely lives up to it. He's one of the nicest dudes, like no type of ego at all. He has like an open ear for everybody. I mean everybody. Like, I don't care how small of a position you think you have, like he will sit there and like chat with you. Like, he doesn't care. And
That's
he
cool.
got to my DP, Scott Sullivan, he was one of the camera operators for this film, and he had like put the bug in Kevin Smith's ear about this project, and finally one day he got him to actually watch it. So when everybody was like taking pictures, he had pulled me aside and told me that he had got to see the trailer and just told me how awesome it was. And so my huge cheese and smiley face was like literally right after he had said that.
Oh, that is cool. That is cool. That is awesome. That is.
Yeah.
Did you ask for like any advice or anything from what on film or anything?
No, unfortunately, like, so when that moment happens where like everybody gets to take pictures, it's such like a chaotic moment, and like, you know, crew size is like 40 people. And I'm just like, man, this isn't the time. But I'm actually working with him again this summer, so I'm definitely, you know, like gonna like find that moment to just like put a bug in his ear and just kind of definitely get some advice and get some jewels dropped on me.
That's cool, man. That is cool. I'm still looking at your YouTube page here. You've had 2.8 million views on the official trailer. Now, Elm Street, Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is, I still believe, owned by New Line. Has anyone from New Line Cinema contacted you about this and said, hey, this is awesome what you did? Or,
bro, it's crickets right now, man. It is.
Oh, it is.
Crickets.
No way. Really?
Yeah, everybody's saying that. Like nobody's. I was like, no, man, nobody has. But it's still, you know, like I'm still pushing it though. And the thing is, I've even, to me, it's not so far fetched that they wouldn't have seen it yet. Only because like I've had the chance to talk to two of the directors. The one director who directed Nightmare 2, and then Rennie Harlan, who directed Nightmare 4, and neither one of them had seen it either. So I was just like, okay, you know, there's a chance that like it just like literally, you know, just like the internet is massive, and it's just like it just hasn't crossed their path yet. Because I've also had the chance to talk to a few of the actors from some of the Nightmare films, and when I finally got to talk to them and like send it over, they hadn't seen it either, even though we're at like, at that time we were at like 2 million views, and like
really?
they didn't even know it existed. Which gives you an idea of just like, to me, how massive the internet is. And even though you think, you know, this person had to have seen it, and it's like, no, it's possible that they haven't.
That's crazy. You figured you would, like, after 2.8 million. It's like someone from the franchise who have worked on that movie is like, man, that's like, who is this? You know, it just passed the word around. It's like, come on, you know. If I was at a convention where Robert Englund was there, I would have been like, hey, have you seen it? You know.
Right, yeah, that's what I'm like. Yeah. I'm hoping like somebody has to like, you know, throw that his way, man. Yeah. Like, bro, have you seen this? Have you seen this thing out there?
I know it. One thing I will say, I don't know how people that listens back and watches this interview about what I'm about to say was, at first I did thought that was Robert Englund. Because the makeup's done so well, man, and he moved just like Robert Englund would as Freddy Krueger. The movements and down and stuff was just fantastic.
Man, he is going to melt when he hears this.
Who is the actor that you got to put the makeup on?
So his name is Nathan Epperson. He's a close buddy of mine. Him and I have worked on a few other projects together.
Right.
On my YouTube page, there's a project called Dead Inside. If you ever get to check that out, it's just like a 1 minute like Walking Dead / like BMW commercial.
Okay. I see it.
And yeah, and he's the guy screaming like a little girl in the entire thing. It was a pleasure working on this project with him, just because he was very self-conscious about like a lot when it came to this, just because, you know, it's such an iconic role.
Right.
And him and I kind of like worked together with it like constantly. And my big thing was I didn't want Robert Englund, like, as in like, I didn't want him to just replicate Robert Englund's performance, like, because to me, like that, like, strips an actor like completely. It's just like, I want pieces of Robert Englund, but I just, I don't want you to just like copy his performance. So it'll be a mix of him with a mix of, like this idea that I want to go with, and I want you to like play with the voice a little bit, and some of the things, we did pull from his performance. Like one of the big things that I remember him always saying was like his posture was always built to the weight of the glove.
Right.
So that's why he always had that lean with it. And it was like, yeah, that's like one really important thing that I want to stick with. And then when it came to the makeup, it was talking to the makeup team. It was the same thing. It's just like, I want Freddy Krueger, but I want you guys also to be a little bit unique with it and play with the design a little bit. And I loved what they did with it, because for me, it didn't feel so far out of line like the reboot did. But it still, to me, felt uniquely like made to them.
Right. It did. I mean, he moved like Freddy Krueger. He did great. I noticed the movement and stuff and everything. It's because I was like, man, he's got it down. He's definitely got it down for the movement on Freddy Krueger. But yeah, I would say on the remake, I'd say like Jackie Earl Harley. I wonder how he felt like filling the shoes of, on the remake, I mean,
yeah, I'm sure it was nerve wracking, man. It's, I mean, it's a lot. It's a lot of pressure.
It is, and I thought he did well. I loved him in Watchmen. I thought he was great in Watchmen, and definitely this. I mean, he did just great. And the actor that you had on the trailer, he did great too, man. I loved it. I definitely loved
appreciate that, man. Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah. You mentioned you're going to be working on a project with Kevin Smith. Is there any other projects that we can expect from you here in the future, later this year?
Personal projects of my own,
or
I have. Well, anything. Yeah. So I'm working on. I am working on a dolphin film right now. I'm the lead editor on it. It's under, I guess one of the distribution companies is Lionsgate. It's for me. It's it's my first kids film that I've ever worked on. So it's an interesting like speed change. Outside of that, I'm also working on another feature film that I'm lead editor on called Buckets of Blood. It is exactly how it sounds. It's a found footage film that kind of like steps back into just the feeling of like an older slasher film.
Right.
And that's directed by a buddy of mine named Bobby Marinelli. And then my next project that I'm working on, like getting off the ground, is a feature film called Dead Drop, which unfortunately I can't give too much information about right now, but just know it's going to be a very unique horror film.
Awesome. That's awesome. You want to give any, before we close here, you want to give any shout outs, any plugs on where they can find you, and shout out to anyone?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at Who's Your Film Daddy. You can find me on Twitter at Who's Your Film Dad. You can search on Facebook, Dom the Director, or our Nightmare page, which is Nightmare Return to Elm Street. And then YouTube, I am under Domozoo, DOMOZOO. And yeah, just, I mean, man, big shout out to just my entire crew that helped make Nightmare possible. My buddy Scott Sullivan, who DP'd everything and just made it just helped make it look as beautiful as it does. Digital Caviar, which is one of the production companies that helped back us and helped provide all of the equipment. And 208 Monkeys, which also helped produce the project. Yeah, and I mean that's it.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, and come back anytime to talk about any projects that you have. Be more happy to sit down and talk with you. Enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me, man.
Do it! Just do it! No, what are you waiting for? Do it!
Want more ELS? The Everett Lee Show podcast is available at the following. Download the audio version of this podcast and previous podcast at everetleeshow.libsyn.com, Stitcher.com, Everett Lee Show. Leave us a rating and a comment in the comments section. iTunes, subscribe to ELS, the Everett Lee Show on iTunes. Give us a rating and a comment. For the video version of this podcast and previous podcasts, visit youtube.com, Everett Lee Show. For interview segments, visit dailymotion.com/Everett Lee Show.
Just do it! Yes, you can! Just do it!
ELS, the Everett Lee Show, is your shot of entertainment to the head. I want to thank Domonic Smith for coming on, discussing Nightmare, Return to Elm Street, and a lot more other things and other projects that he has planned. I can't wait to see the projects he mentioned that will be coming out later this year, and a lot of surprises coming from him, and a bright, good future ahead of him. And my hat's off to him for the passion and everything he does with his film producing and directing. So much passion, man, so much. And head over to his YouTube page, as he mentioned, and check out that Nightmare Return to Elm Street fan trailer. You will love it if you're a fan of the Freddy Krueger Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. And you can check out a lot more programming on the Podcast City Network at podcastcity.net, the official website of Podcast City Network. You check out the Everett Lee Show, ELS Uncut, Films a Classic, Forking Around with Cody, The Grim Block Show, The Chris Carter Show, Imaginarium with Scott and Todd, and Super Radio Brothers podcast, all on the Podcast City Network. Follow Podcast City Network over on Facebook, facebook.com/Podcast City Network. And on Twitter, give a tweet to Podcast City Network on Twitter at Podcast City Net. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to ELS Uncut. Be sure to tune in next week with my interview with Ron Jones. So, Everett Lee signing off. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you again next week for ELS Uncut.